You looked at a number of different types of regulatory reform and found that one in particular is especially useful. What is that?
That would be a sunset provision. It's a form of periodic review. There was a study done last year by the Mercatus Center at George Mason that looked at different regulatory reviews in all 50 states, and the one that they found that really stood out was the sunset review.
And for those who aren't familiar, sunset means what?
Sunsetting is limiting the length, the duration of a law or regulation. So it's basically putting an end date on the rule.
Now, what happens if it's a type of rule that ought to go on and on and on? Are there provisions that would allow a rule to go on after a review?
Yes, and it could be readopted.
Okay. And in looking at this, why does it turn out that a sunsetting provision seems to be so good?
I think the reason why is because the way that legislatures are structured, basically, any rule that gets passed kind of creates its own gravity and accrues factions who want it to remain because it weighs to scale in their favor. Just the typical process of rulemaking and legislation is timely and costly in terms of time, and so it's easier to let things be. So the assumption under the current system is that any rule that's made is going to keep going, and it requires the deliberative process of government to end it. By changing the assumption with a sunset provision so that everything's assumed to end, that way we are able to revisit old rules and old laws that may have become obsolete.
Now, one of the things your report says is that to have a good sunsetting provision, you also need to have something on the other end, the sort of the sunrise provision. What do you recommend there?
Well, because sunset rules that are good need to go through the process of readoption, they would go under as new rules. So we need a good process by which new rules are adopted, such as a REINS Act that will require major rules to be approved also by the General Assembly, stronger cost-benefit analysis, something that's called the Stossel Rule that was proposed by John Stossel, it's regulatory reciprocity, which would require agencies to give up, say, two old rules to adopt a new rule, small business flexibility analysis, and other things like that.